Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're not just scratching the surface. We are essentially excavating the foundation of modern Western society.
Yeah, we really are. It's a massive one today.
It is. We have a source today that is controversial, it's dense, and it's going to challenge a lot of the narratives you see on the news every single night. If you're interested in the manosphere, the philosophy of the red pill, and, understanding the history of our institutions before they were captured by feminists and Marxists, this is for you.
Absolutely. It's a text that claims to be a diagnostic tool, a tool for figuring out why everything from your HR department to the family court system feels like it's operating on a completely different logic than it did, say, 30 or 40 years ago.
Exactly. And because we're going ultra long and ultra incisive on this one, I have a mandatory instruction for you right up top.
Yeah.
If you value this kind of unfiltered deep analysis where we look at the sources others are frankly too scared to touch, you need to like and subscribe to the show right now.
Yep, hit that button.
It helps us keep the lights on and keeps these deep dives coming. So let's get to the source. We're breaking down a new ebook. It's titled Feminist Logic, Hypocrisy, Misandry, Catabolic Girl Math, Cultural Revolution, Lies, and More Lies.
Quite a title.
Right. It was published in 2025 by Conrad Riker.
Yeah.
And I have to say, looking at that title, Riker is... he's not exactly aiming for subtlety here.
No, not at all. He's throwing the gauntlet down. His core thesis is that what we call feminism today isn't a movement for equality or civil rights. He argues it's a genocentric delusion.
A mass psychological revolt against maturity. I think that was his exact quote.
That's the quote. He's trying to reverse engineer why Western institutions have collapsed into what he calls emotional bureaucracy.
Before we really dig into this, we need to set the ground rules for the listener. We are here as impartial reporters. Our mission is to unpack the arguments, the data, and the theories presented in the book.
We're mapping the architecture of his argument.
Exactly. We're helping you understand Riker's perspective and this specific red pill worldview. We aren't taking sides or endorsing it, but we are going to explore it fully so you know exactly what's being said.
Right, we're just laying out the source material.
And I will say this right now. If you find these concepts fascinating as we go through them, or if you feel like Riker is putting words to something you felt but just couldn't articulate, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy the ebook immediately.
Yeah, we're just giving you the highlights today.
Exactly. Riker goes into a level of detail we just can't cover in one sitting. So where does he begin? Because he doesn't start with the laws or economics, does he?
No, he starts inside the mind. He starts with psychology. Specifically, this concept he coins as surrogate mothering syndrome.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because he's not talking of actual surrogacy, like carrying a child for someone else.
No, he's speaking metaphorically, but about a very real psychological drive. Riker argues that the feminist movement, and specifically the leadership class within it, is largely driven by women who have repressed their biological maternal instincts.
He points to some specific figures.
Yeah.
Right?
He points to figures like Gloria Steinem, Tarana Burke, and he brings up this whole cohort of, childless climate activists.
Right.
His theory is that the biological drive to nurture and protect doesn't just vanish if you choose not to have children. It gets displaced. It gets redirected.
Redirected into ideological control.
Exactly. He argues they become surrogate mothers to the world. They desire the status of motherhood. They want the moral authority, the reverence, the title of the nurturer.
Like without the mess.
Yes, without the diapers, without the tantrums, without the extreme self-sacrifice of raising a specific child in a private home.
So it's essentially a form of performative care.
Performative care is the exact term he uses. Real motherhood is private, it's thankless, and it's incredibly difficult. But this ideological motherhood is public, it's subsidized, and it's clean.
But the danger, as I understand his argument, is that because they aren't raising actual children, they start treating the population like adult citizens as their children.
That's the core of it. And that leads to this binary he talks about, which he calls maternal tribalism.
I found this distinction really helpful in understanding the modern political landscape, actually.
It's a very clarifying lens for his readers. He argues that if you view the world through this distorted maternal lens, you split humanity into two distinct groups: infants and predators.
Infants and predators.
Right. The infants are the marginalized groups, the activists, the people who need constant protection, validation, and resources. In the eyes of the surrogate mother, these people can do no wrong. They're babies. They are innocent by default.
And the predators. I assume that's where the men come in.
You assume correctly. In Riker's framework, this worldview casts the average man, and specifically the competent, independent man, as the eternal predator.
He's viewed as guilty.
Guilty, dangerous, and in need of restraint. He exists in this system only to be taxed, controlled, and punished to ensure the safety of the infants.
Wow. So you have this psychological drive that moves from the individual psyche right into the machinery of the state. And that brings us to the second major theme of the book, the rise of the maternal state.
Right, moving from culture to actual government policy.
Because Riker argues this isn't just about cultural vibes, it's about how the government fundamentally functions now.
This is where his political philosophy gets really heavy. He describes this massive shift from what we used to have, a paternal state, to this new maternal state schema.
So historically, the state was a referee.
Exactly, an arbiter of law. Its job was to ensure the rules were fair, protect basic rights, and then just get out of the way.
The classic night watchman theory of government.
Right. But the maternal state, according to Riker, operates like a therapist. It's no longer about protecting rights, it's about managing feelings and ensuring equal outcomes.
He uses a really potent metaphor here, comparing the state to a parent dealing with a household.
Yeah, it's a great visual. Imagine it's winter and the furnace in the house breaks. The paternal focus is on fixing the broken furnace so the family doesn't freeze to death. It's structural survival.
But the maternal focus.
In this specific surrogate context, the maternal focus is on soothing the crying baby right now, wrapping it in a blanket, singing to it.
And that's the safety paradox he mentions.
Yes. The state prioritizes immediate emotional comfort, soothing the baby over structural survival, fixing the furnace. It will spend endless resources validating feelings while the actual infrastructure of the house rots away.
And he brings data to back this up. It's not just a theory. He cites World Bank data regarding female-led governments.
He does. The book cites figures claiming that female-led governments tend to increase social spending by an average of 18%.
18%.
Yeah, but simultaneously, they cut defense and infrastructure. He points to Sweden as the prime example. He describes their government programs as essentially emotional security nets.
I recall the bit where he talked about adults using pacifiers.
Right, he's referring to gender dialogues and safe spaces that treat fully grown adults like toddlers. Riker calls this funding dependency, and this ties into a crucial economic concept he introduces: catabolic economics.
Catabolic. Let's unpack that word. It sounds biological.
It is biological. In biology, a catabolic state is when an organism is starving, so it starts breaking down its own muscle and tissue to feed itself.
To stay alive in the short term.
Exactly. Riker argues that the maternal state is catabolic. It's burning down the long-term structures of civilization: defense, infrastructure, male ambition, capital accumulation. It's burning all of that down to fund immediate emotional consumption.
Eating the furniture to keep the fire going.
That's it, exactly.
And the group being eaten to fund this fire is men. Which leads us directly into arguably the most controversial part of the book, the economic and legal war on men.
What he calls the death of fatherhood.
He paints a really bleak picture here. He argues that the state has effectively become a surrogate husband.
The invisible husband.
Right. Think about it. If the state provides housing, food, childcare, physical protection, and healthcare, the biological father becomes redundant.
Not just redundant, Riker argues the father becomes a liability. A biological father has opinions, he requires compromise, he expects authority in his own home.
But the state?
The state, as a husband, just writes checks. It asks for nothing but compliance. Riker argues this creates a massive incentive structure to literally remove the father from the home.
He cites that Detroit stat here.
Yeah, 72% of children in Detroit growing up without fathers, and he blames the motherhood bonus for this.
Explain how that math works, the motherhood bonus.
It's his term for the welfare cliff. Riker details how a single mother often receives significantly more in state benefits: housing vouchers, EBT, medical care. Way more than a single father would get in the exact same financial situation. But more importantly, if she marries the father, their combined income means she loses all those benefits. So the state is literally paying her, financially incentivizing her, to stay single.
There was that anecdote he quoted from Reddit, the Ohio Reddit story, that really crystallized this concept he calls catabolic girl math for me.
Oh, that story is a perfect, if infuriating, example for his readers.
Walk us through it.
So it involved a woman on an Ohio subreddit bragging that she makes the equivalent of $5,200 a month in welfare benefits.
$5,200 a month, tax-free, essentially.
Yes. Meanwhile, her ex-husband, who is an electrical engineer, a guy who actually pays heavily into the tax system, he's struggling. He's depressed, living in a tiny efficiency apartment.
And what was she doing with the money?
She was posting about using that state money to take a tropical vacation with her new boyfriend.
And the reaction from the community wasn't, hey, you're exploiting the system.
Not at all. The comments were applauding her. They were celebrating her for cracking the code.
Tracking the system.
Right. And Riker calls this catabolic girl math. It's a system where resources are consumed without creating any value. You burn down the family structure to fund a lifestyle revolution. The engineer is the muscle being broken down, and the vacation is the consumption.
But Riker argues this isn't just about money. It's about violence, too. He brings up David Knight.
Yes, David Knight, a CNN reporter, according to the book. Riker says Knight brought up CDC data regarding reciprocal domestic violence.
And what does that data show?
The data show that women initiate violence in relationships at rates equal to or even higher than men. He also pointed out a really dark statistic. 68% of child abuse fatalities occur in single mother homes.
68%?
Yeah.
And what happened to Knight for pointing out that data?
He was fired.
Wow.
Riker uses this to prove that facts contradicting the maternal narrative, which is the narrative that women are always victims and men are always predators, those facts are actively suppressed.
Right. We hear about toxic masculinity every single day.
But toxic motherhood is a forbidden phrase. Even when the body count in single mother homes is objectively higher, according to the data.
That control of language, that's the ultimate weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to the next segment, the social weapon. Riker calls it GSR.
Gossip, shaming, rallying.
Break that down for us. How does GSR work as a weapon?
Well, Riker argues that because women generally avoid direct physical confrontation, they've evolved a highly effective covert strategy for conflict. It's a network effect.
Okay.
It starts with gossip, planting a seed of doubt about a man's character. Then it moves to public shaming to signal the rest of the tribe. And finally, rallying the mob to exclude or destroy the target.
He argues this is how men are destroyed in the modern workplace. Not through due process, not through objective performance reviews, but through pure reputation destruction.
Exactly. He tells that chilling story about the HR manager firing a guy for the vibe.
Yeah, the vibe fire. Tell that one.
The manager admitted on record that the male employee was a top performer, exceeded all metrics, but he was fired because his vibe was off.
Because he made people uncomfortable.
Right. Riker argues this is the maternal state completely infiltrating corporate America. If a man makes women feel unsafe, and Riker notes that the word safety has been totally redefined to just mean emotionally uncomfortable.
Right. Violence means words I don't like.
Exactly. If he violates that emotional comfort, he loses his livelihood. No due process.
And he backs us up with a Harvard study, doesn't he?
He does. The book cites a Harvard study claiming women gossip 3.2 times more than men, and that the gossip is predominantly negative.
And when you combine that with institutional capture,
It's game over. Riker points out that women now hold about 75% of DEI roles, and they make up 76% of K through 12 teachers.
so the argument is that the environment itself has been terraformed.
Totally redesigned. If the people making the social rules and the office culture are predominantly from a demographic that prioritizes consensus and emotional sharing, then what happens to male traits?
Competitiveness, stoicism.
Right. They aren't just undervalued, they are actively pathologized. They're treated as a sickness that needs to be cured by HR.
So if you're a listener right now,
Yeah.
maybe you're a guy who feels like the walls are closing in reading all this. What does Riker say is the solution? Because he does pivot in the book from diagnosis to prescription, the red pill restoration.
This is the most critical pivot in the text. Riker says flat out, stop trying to fix the women and stop trying to fix the state.
Because it's not broken.
Exactly. The system is working exactly as it was designed to work. It's designed to erase fathers and punish male achievement. You cannot vote your way out of this, and you certainly can't argue your way out of it with someone operating on maternal logic.
So what is the actionable step?
You change the men. Chapter 20 is massive on this. He calls for a radical return to stoicism. And he doesn't just mean keeping a stiff upper lip, he means rejecting therapy culture entirely.
He's very anti-therapy.
Very. He views therapy as a feminine trap designed to make men navel gaze and become weak. Instead, he advocates for cold showers, deadlifts, and accountability, rebuilding the biological hardware.
Yeah, the software too. He emphasizes reading the Western canon.
Yes, he says men need to stop reading modern deconstructions and go back to Homer, Shakespeare, Kant.
Not treating them as just dead white guys.
Exactly, treating them as the architects of civilization. Riker argues that these authors deal in logic, structure, and universal truths, not lived experience or fleeting feeling.
Reconnecting with that gives men a backbone.
Right. It arms them intellectually against a culture trying to dissolve them.
He also talks about parallel institutions. This seems like the real exit strategy.
It is. He gives an incredible example of a construction company in Denver. This company operates with 0 HR department.
0.
None. No diversity training, no emotional check-ins, no policing of vibes. It's just work, competence, and pay. And apparently they are thriving because the men working there actually feel free.
He mentions brotherhoods, too. The Iron Ring.
The Iron Ring and the Fraternal Order of Fathers. These are groups where men build physical and social spaces that GSR, that gossip and shaming, simply cannot penetrate.
Creating zones where the maternal state has no
It's
jurisdiction.
precisely. And he throws in a stat here about happiness that completely blows up the child-free influencer lifestyle we constantly see pushed on places like TikTok.
Oh, this is a massive counter-narrative. Let's hear the data.
He cites CDC data claiming that married fathers are 40% happier and they live 5 years longer than childless men.
40%.
Yeah. He uses this to argue that taking the red pill isn't about checking out of society to go play video games in a basement. It's about checking into the right things. Family, responsibility, but doing it on your own terms, not the state's terms.
That leads to his final philosophical point, the shift toward the transcendentals.
This is the high-level shift. Riker argues that men today are trapped in a pathetic cycle of seeking female validation, asking questions like, am I a good ally? Am I toxic? Do you like me?
Begging for approval from the system that hates them.
Right. He says men need to stop asking those questions entirely. Instead, they should seek truth, goodness, and beauty. The transcendentals. If a man orients his life toward those universal values, he becomes completely immune to the shaming mechanisms of the maternal state.
He basically says, stop caring what the collective mother thinks of you. Exit the hive.
Exit the hive. That's the ultimate message.
So just to recap this incredible journey, Riker traces this massive arc from the psychological hijacking of the maternal instinct to the complete capture of the state and the economy, and finally to the individual man's responsibility to build his own lifeboat. It's a dense, controversial, and incredibly provocative thesis.
It's a total repudiation of the modern social contract. Riker is essentially telling his readers that the deal offered to men by the modern West is a fundamentally bad deal. The only winning move is to renegotiate the terms of your own existence.
And look, we've only scratched the surface here. We didn't even get to the chapter on the education system, or his detailed history of the legal changes in the family courts back in the 1970s.
There's so much more in the text.
If you want the full shovel, as he calls it, to dig yourself out of the lies, you need to read the source material. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Feminist Logic by Conrad Riker.
Yeah, it's the kind of book you probably want to download and read before it gets banned or suppressed, considering how directly it attacks the current power structure.
Seriously. And speaking of suppression, the author mentions his platforms are constantly under attack. So if you want to keep up with them, make sure you follow @ConradRager on Substack, Twitter, and YouTube before he gets taken down.
It's worth following just to see the real-time reaction to the book, honestly. The cultural commentary happening around it is as fascinating as the text itself.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Right. One last reminder. If you appreciate us diving into these forbidden zones, hit that like and subscribe button. It matters. It tells the algorithm that people still want deep, unfiltered, real analysis.
It really does make a difference.
We're going to leave you with Riker's final provocative question to the listener. It's something for you to mull over on your own. He asks, if civilization relies on men protecting the perimeter, what happens when the state punishes the protectors and rewards the dependent?
That is the question that decides the future.
Think about it. We'll see you in the next deep dive.